All right, we'll call the meeting to order. March 19th. Thanks everybody for coming. We'll start with the roll call.
Right. So our youth members are unable to join this evening, so we'll start with committee member Simon. Thank you. Committee member Sampath.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Reed is also unable to attend. Committee member Lang.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member D. Alexander.
Here.
Thank you. And Chair Burtis.
Here.
Thank you.
Let's salute the flag. Flag of the United States of America. Republic one indivisible, under God,
Injustice.
justice and liberty for all. Yes, exactly. Those brain cells are long gone. Great. I would just remind people to make sure you push the button so that your green light illuminates if you want to speak. So let's start with open time for public comment regarding non-agenda items. We don't have anybody present physically. So Phoebe, do we have anybody online?
At this time, we do not have any participants on Zoom, and we did not receive any email comments.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'll close the public comment period. We're very pleased to have a new committee member, Sarah D. Alexander, replacing David Johnson. We'd love to hear a brief introduction, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here as a new member of the Climate Action Committee. And I come with a background academically and professionally in sustainability and community engagement. And that's largely in institutions of higher education from my past residence in Washington, D.C. And during that time, I was able to gain a lot of experience in building partnerships and developing initiatives to help combat the climate crisis. And so I'm so thrilled to be able to give back to this new community that I'm a part of. I've been here for about 4 months, and I think I have a lot of expertise and skills to share with the committee, but I'm also very excited to learn from all of you and the community members to really identify needs here and how we can tackle them together.
Great. Thank you. Well, we're really happy to have you here. So thanks for making the time and contributing your energy and your skills. So thanks. We'll move on to approval of the minutes from the January meeting. There was no February meeting, as you recall. I was not at the January meeting, so I'll abstain from that. But are there any comments on the minutes? Did you have a comment?
No.
Okay. In that case, somebody should move to approve them and then second. Okay. I guess we'll do a quick vote to approve them. There's only 3 voting people. Is that quorum? Is that sufficient? All right.
That's, yeah, in this case, I
Close
think
enough.
that's the
Yeah. Okay.
quorum for.
Okay. So the minutes are approved. Very good. So on to general business. First item is the discussion of key performance indicators scorecard from Karen. Karen will give us an overview, and then if there's any public comment, we can do that, and then we'll move on to committee comments.
Okay, so I'm hoping Phoebe has here we go, slide of this. So a little background here. Last year we did a presentation on heat pump water heaters and tried to get community engagement regarding that. But that was really spurred by looking at greenhouse gas contributions in Corte Madera and what areas really needed attention, shall we say, or could use improvement. And what we had noted was, of course, transportation was huge, but that our EV purchases were well above what we'd expected. So perhaps we didn't need as much attention there, but water heaters really were the biggest contribution outside of that, single biggest, I should say, not collectively. So what I wanted to try to do was just put together some data that we could maybe refer to once every 6 months just to see how things are going in Corte Madera. And we sort of struggled with the name because scorecard really implies that we have the ability to move the numbers when in fact, I don't think we really do, but we have the ability to influence the numbers somewhat. So anyway, that was the thinking. And there's 5 indicators there, perhaps, and they are percent of EVs purchased in a year, percent of purchases that are EV specifically. And we did mean to have, I guess Phoebe has documentation on the calculations for this because they have to be a little tricky when you get down to it. Number of town-owned EV chargers, because we really don't have an indication of private chargers, which are really key. And we thought perhaps after Phil's presentation, we might add somehow chargers for multifamily residences if we can get that kind of data. Water heaters electrified, and that refers to building permits. And we will also have data underneath that regarding number of building permits. I remember when I looked at it a year or two ago, it's pretty dismal in terms of electrification. So we would kind of want a percentage, but nonetheless, increases are great. So it's water heaters electrified, space heaters electrified. And then when we again looked at the carbon footprint in Corte Madera, of course, it's the all other that really overwhelms everything, consumption, et cetera. And the only indicator I possibly had was the Resilient Neighborhoods program, where people are really encouraged to look at and reduce their carbon footprint overall. And Vinitha has been in touch, and she'll report on it later, but wanted to see the graduates every year. We can get that data, and then the total number of graduates. And I think the total is a little over 100. And of course, we have, I don't exactly know how to use that as a percentage, but maybe 4,000 households, something like that, to view that as kind of an indication. But more is better. So this was a thought of mine to just pull up every 6 months, see where we are. Maybe when we're thinking of the year ahead, to look at the data and welcome comments, additions, et cetera.
We'll start with questions, and then we go to public comment, and then the committee members can comment. So if you have clarifying questions for Karen, now's the time to ask.
Karen, how is that measured, the Resilient Neighborhoods graduates? Did you get that directly from Resilient Neighborhoods?
I'll give it back to Phoebe.
Yeah, that's the data directly from Resilient Neighborhoods.
Can I just clarify, these are all within the year. These are not cumulative, right?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. And you have the detailed method or definition on the next slides.
Yes, Phoebe put that together. I thought it would be, I work with Phoebe so we could both understand it, sort of to pass it through as committee members come through. But yes, please, you have to get down on the data and all that. But yeah, please review. Yeah. But it's very heartening to see the EVs go up. But I keep thinking that means we need more public chargers just to make that more convenient so people don't leave their EVs in their driveway. I don't know.
Any other questions regarding the key performance indicators? No? Okay. In that case, any public comment?
This time I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we do not have any emailed public comment for this item.
Okay. In that case, we'll open it up for discussion and comments from the committee. Sarah?
Thank you. Thank you for developing this, Karen. I think this is a great tool to help keep ourselves accountable as the year goes on. I think these are great metrics that we have on here. And when I compare them with the work plan for 2025, I noticed that there's one more item that could be quantified, which is increasing tree coverage in town, at least for the public land areas. I wonder if that would be an interesting addition. I see one of the notes here is to do it by the end of 2025. So it could be a way to keep ourselves on track for that item too.
It's possible. Yes. Yeah, we had a discussion on trees. My concern was fire. But I think we just modified that the trees, as long as fire was into consideration. I'm not sure would we have data for that?
That's a good question. The town isn't necessarily collecting
That's
coverage data. There's a couple online tools that exist to sort of quantify that, but I'm not sure if they're updated on a frequency that would be on even an annual frequency. I would have to look into that.
Okay.
What about new trees planted as opposed to, or net new trees? I don't know. Do we have some measure? Is there a permit? I mean, presumably the town is doing the municipal planting, right?
Right. It's really would be very challenging to get a comprehensive picture of net tree planting. Because of course, if someone's planting on private property, there's no permit requirement there. So we could potentially track plantings that were reviewed by the town in some way, if they were a replacement for a tree that was removed with a tree permit, or if it was part of a larger development project. But that's not something we currently have a system in place to track.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that there's any systematic data that would help us really see what the contribution to decreasing greenhouse gases are. Fortunately.
You'd have to go through each individual building permit, right? Because they're all, my recollection, at least from ours, was they're just buried in there of, oh, you're taking out a tree, you're supposed to plant two more. So for residents, that is, I think it'd be quite difficult to get a metric on it. But if there's an initiative from the town to plant more trees, I guess that could be something that might be trackable. It was done by the town itself.
Yeah, I think what we narrowed it to on the work plan for this year was really focusing in terms of public plantings on Town Park, where we know there's been a lot of interest in replacing the trees that were removed there and potentially adding coverage. I don't know that we've identified any other areas where we're looking to increase coverage this year, although there was some comments by the committee about that during the work plan discussion. I don't think a sort of town-wide initiative like that is on the work plan currently.
I was looking at the landscape plan for proposed plan for Menke Park. And on that drawing, they were going to remove trees at Menke Park to provide access or something. I don't know if they also plan to replant trees in that case. That's something, I think there's going to be a public forum on that. I don't recall the date. I have it on my calendar, but soon they're doing a little tour of the proposed plan. So I plan to go to that and find out more at that time.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. And that's a ADA improvement, I believe, that's occurring at.
But I don't know if there's I know that the blurb said they were going to remove some trees, and I don't know if they were going to replace them with other trees.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure either, but I can look into that.
Yeah, I'll look into it too when I plan to go to that review.
I would just suggest, I mean, I think it's an interesting idea. Sarah, if you are interested to pursue it, you could try to find out what the options would be for a metric that we could actually track. It sounds like the data may be challenging, but if you come up with something, maybe you could bring it back to the committee for consideration.
I would, once again, I made this point before, but I'm very concerned with fire safety and the narrow streets in Corte Madera. And if you look at, the town 50 years ago, we've increased the tree coverage dramatically. And unfortunately, it makes us more susceptible to fire. So I think it's a tough trade-off.
And I appreciate that background. Thank you. And also to amplify perhaps a question that you mentioned is for the town-owned EV chargers, if a multifamily dwelling or a business installed an EV charger, would they have to go through the town to get a permit?
Yes.
So if that's the case and some do get installed, that could be an interesting metric to capture within the scorecard too.
Yes, that was an addition we had discussed, but I think great that you're supporting it. That's terrific.
Anita, any comments? No? Okay.
I'd like to
Yeah,
make
sure.
a comment yeah, and I'd like to need to be a gorilla to turn that mic. But I'd just like to comment that Resilient Neighborhoods is an extraordinarily compelling program. I think that's a great metric to follow, and I would be remiss if I didn't reiterate that.
Great. We're going to hear more about that, I think, in a few minutes, right, from Vanita. So just to clarify, the purpose of sharing this today was to have the committee adopt it as a sort of permanent piece of our collateral, I guess. Is that the thing?
Well, my thought was to try and look at it maybe every 6 months. And I think the suggestion has been made to try and add multifamily chargers.
Mhm.
So we could do that. And so maybe if it would be, is there a consensus that we would look at it every 6 months and in turn review it in terms of content?
I think so. Don't see any
Yeah.
reason not to. Anybody object to that?
Okay.
Would we also plan to post it on the website or use it in some public facing fashion, or?
It would be part of meeting minutes, wouldn't it? I mean, that's not huge, but whatever people feel comfortable with.
Yeah, we could definitely, publicize it as much or as little as the committee would like to. I think it is valuable in terms of providing metrics that are more, in some ways, understandable than our greenhouse gas inventory numbers. But it's, up to the committee on how you'd like to use it. One other comment I have is that I did look into the data in terms of if we wanted to present the permit numbers for heat pump water heaters and space heaters as percentages instead of numbers. And so if we did want to do that for 2024, there were 56 water heater permits in total. 8 of those were heat pump water heaters, so that's about 14%. For HVAC, there were a total of 79 permits, 27 were heat pumps, so that's about 34%. And then for 2023, numbers are a little lower for water heaters, so there were 62 permits total, 9.6% of which were heat pump. And then for HVAC, there were 85 permits total, and again, 34% were heat pump.
I think showing both somehow would be good.
Yeah, I agree. That's helpful context. Did I read somewhere that the water heaters electrified doesn't necessarily mean it was a heat pump? That it could also just be an electric water heater?
No, I did not count water heaters that were not heat pumps.
Okay.
So, but there were very few. There was maybe only one that was an electric on-demand water heater and not a heat pump.
Okay. So in that case, I might suggest we clarify that this is heat pump water heaters.
In the column there, it is
Yeah.
clarified in the next page, but you're saying on
Yeah.
the front.
If it's specific to heat pumps, I think we should say that. Okay, any other comments on this? Thank you, Karen, for pushing this forward. So why don't we plan to review this again at the September meeting?
Okay.
Unless you think if I don't know when the data comes through or when is sort of the right time of the year to do it, but
I'll check, but as you know, EVs are sort of quarterly
Quarterly, yeah.
and sort of relying on Phoebe for the building permit data and like the rest. So that would be up to her, I think, unless you'd like some help.
Yeah. I mean, the other data, it's just a matter of sort of collecting it and analyzing it. So it's available at any time, although once we look at partial years, there's some nuance in terms of permits that are issued versus when they're actually finalized
Right.
and how we want to count those. And then I believe the resilient neighborhoods is usually looked at on a quarterly basis as well. So as long as they're able to provide us that information.
Okay.
So let's plan on reviewing it again at September if you want to do it sooner, if there's reason to, Karen. I assume you're going to be taking the lead on this. So,
Sure.
yeah, if you
Mhm.
want to bring it in July because the new data's out or something, or August, that's
I think September would be good because then you'd have half your data finalized probably.
okay. Very good. Well, thank you. Move on to the next item, which is discussion of strategies to promote multifamily EV charger installations. Over you to Phil. Yeah.
So in the last couple of weeks, I've been to several meetings outside of this committee where I try to gather more information about multifamily charging. I don't know. Sarah knows that my family has an apartment building in Greenbrae, which is right over there, that put 8 EV chargers in them, even though nobody has EVs. And a few people have gotten excited about me doing that, and so I wanted to promote that. And to respond to Karen's comment last meeting, I'm happy to give a tour of that facility, which would probably take 10 or 15 minutes, and kind of explain what I did and how I did it, why I did it, and how it works physically on the ground. There's a problem with a lot of buildings in that they don't have the load capacity delivered to the building to willy-nilly charge your EV at the same time you're using other electrical devices. And in one of the meetings I had, I was advised by a woman named Carleen Cullen, Cool the Earth, about a device that can be installed that will avoid costly panel upgrades and deal with situations where load capacity would otherwise be inadequate. And what this device does, it causes a charging session to be temporarily paused if the demand on the panel from other sources exceeds 80% of the load capacity of the panel. And that makes it much more attractive to would make it a lot more attractive to owners of multifamily properties that, had a willingness to pursue this. It's kind of like the same role as an automatic transfer switch that was described to us in a meeting where Tom Kabat made that presentation. You might remember that, a couple of you who were here, about you can do it manually or they have automatic switches that, if you want to cook a meal, you can't run your dryer and it automatically shuts the dryer off while you're cooking the meal. Dryer goes back on, that sort of thing. I'm also, so I'm happy to give a tour to any of you guys anytime as you just contact me. I'm available most of the time to do that. Or anybody in the public who wants to contact me. I'm also getting an introduction to David Moeller after I provide him some photos of the scene. David Moeller is a Larkspur resident and a former PG&E engineer who's active in promoting climate resiliency, and he's very interested in what's going on statewide as well. But he'll introduce me to Miles Smith, who's also an active person in the county and on a couple boards in promoting EV adoption. And apparently Miles has connections to the Marin Property Owners Association. And that's one of the items that we discussed earlier that we might want to be give a presentation to or introduce ourselves to them with what we are willing to do. Also, Lori Mott, who's from San Anselmo, had the idea of writing a letter to the editor of the IJ saying that there's a couple of people around who are voluntarily putting in EV chargers. And I think that it might be an opinion piece that she gives to the editor, but it might promote embellishing an article later that would be published in the paper. At least that's her hope. And I told her that it would be nice to indicate available resources in that if there was such an article written, to indicate not just that it was happening, but there's available resources that people can contact. So those are three things that I'm kind of actively involved with. And the other ideas that we discussed, I'm going to reiterate now. And one is making a flyer available at the Public Works counter to anybody who comes in to kind of educate them about those and say there's resources that they can contact if they're interested in installing chargers. Another idea that was brought up was making public comment at town council meetings about it. And another was postcard that targeted owners of multifamily properties and residents of those properties. So that's kind of the sum of it.
We have questions, clarifying questions first.
Yeah, I have a question. So in terms of the committee's involvement, what do you see in terms of promoting this? And let me, when I looked at, I guess I from your comments, I can see, we could put together a postcard and send it out. One thing, when I reviewed both MCE and PG&E's programs promoting chargers and multifamily dwellings, they had, I should say, of course there are incentives, et cetera, but they had a very structured approach, whereas they would work with you, one, to survey your tenants to see what their feeling was. And then, then they sort of took it step by step. So do you envision, it's great that you're becoming kind of an expert on this, but do you envision the committee doing just informational, say postcards and flyers? Do you envision us volunteering to help a multifamily dwelling owner go through the process? Where do you see us getting involved in? What would be the action items?
Well, I'd certainly see us getting involved in promoting, putting flyers on the Public Works counter and possibly making public comments at the town council meetings, sending out a postcard to people and, backing the mailing of a postcard. And the involvement, I guess, of the town council would be that requests could be made to the committee about showing our expertise about what they can do. And I would certainly also show them that there's options for different programs that will provide rebates to the person who installs them, through rebates are usually offered when you put in the chargers and you get a networker to also be involved in that. And that's a way that the landlord can be reimbursed for they get the rebate and then they can be reimbursed by the vendor during the process of charging the cars. I didn't elect to do that because I didn't want to go through that process. And if I needed extra income from having done this, then I would merely call it an amenity and raise the rent.
So just to be clear, so you're saying that the committee could, the action items for the committee, with your help, leadership, whatever, would be comments at the town council, postcard, flyer at the Public Works counter, and then somehow publicizing that you and or this committee could help owners through the process or be information resource?
Right, should guide them in toward the process and in any various way they might want to go, any of the various ways they might want to go.
So we have them contact you, or what do you?
Right. And I think that hopefully this committee will become, if you come and take a tour, then, one-on-one, I can give a pretty good explanation of my knowledge about what's involved in doing that. And I might not have, I explored some of the programs with networking, and that's an option that I can still take if I wish to. At this point, the people the residents who live in that apartment building, none of them have EVs, but they're getting pretty excited about the idea of it. And so down the road sometime, maybe this will become more attractive, the idea of networking.
What do you see as the main way to market this to building owners?
I think the Marin Property Owners Association is probably a good way to do that. And I don't know if the committee can really, if the committee has ideas for how to do that, other than my, pursuing this lead I have. I mean, I used to work for a company that was a member of that association, but I've been involved for quite a while.
Let me clarify. What would we say is the incentive for building owners to do this?
To get at the head of the curve. I know there's some resources there's some marketing online being done, advertising apartments for rent that have EV charging capability. So they can get on early before something happens, the grid crashes or something, where they can get on board and get these chargers installed.
Just as an amenity, basically.
As an amenity,
Yeah.
or as a profit-making thing if they want to go that route. I think it's pretty simple to do, and it's not a huge capital outlay relative to the rents in the area.
Okay.
Questions? Sarah, you look like you've got one.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that. I'm a new resident at Belmont Tam, and they have EV chargers there that are free for tenants to use. And that was a selling point for us when we were choosing where to live in the area. And I don't know if this is a good time for suggestions.
This is just for questions.
Okay, excellent.
What are the incentives right now for if you were to go through the MC? I think it's MCE is the primary one providing incentives. How much is the incentive?
I think it's $2,500 per unit.
It's 3,000 per unit, and then there's an extra $500 if you're enrolled in Deep Green.
I thought it was 2,500 as the base price and 3,000 if you enroll in Deep Green, but I might be wrong.
Sure, that's what they said at the meeting today.
But you have to be connected to the demand response program, right, in order to qualify for that, as I understand.
Use equipment from their list of qualified vendors who meet whatever requirements they've set for the program.
Okay. And remind me, how much did your on a per space basis, how much were these? They were about $2,500 each,
A
right?
little, we're within $100 of $2,000
Right. So
each.
it sounds like the equipment to be demand response enabled, it maybe is a little more expensive, but you could have had most of the cost reimbursed, it sounds like, through the current program anyway. At MCE, had they been compliant with their equipment requirements, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yep. Okay, that's pretty compelling.
But that's that's not the superchargers, that's the other charger. Yeah, I don't know.
That's a level 2 charger.
Level
which
2
is-
charger.
Which is about as good as it gets in an apartment building, because you could do
Yeah.
level 1. Some people promote level 1 as being adequate because the average person drives 40 miles a day, and that'll give you 40 miles overnight. But this charger will give you anything you need in a few hours, more or less, depending on the car and so forth.
Okay, if there's no further questions, why don't we see if there's any public comment or questions?
No hands raised on Zoom, and we did not receive any emailed public comments for this item either.
Okay, so we'll close public comment on that. In that case, discussion, comments, anything, Sarah?
Yeah, I wonder if for the development of this, if a direct approach could be done where perhaps we target 20, 25 multifamily dwelling property owners and find a time, schedule a date where they could come and visit your property and check out your setup and ask some questions and see if we can get a couple who are interested in pursuing it on their own property. And then we'd have a direct contact with the audience that we're looking to support and be able to provide them resources along the way. And if we were successful, it'd be a great initiative to highlight, to talk about at the town level, and hopefully get other property managers excited about and wanting to invest in.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, it seems to me that, Phil, what you're proposing is that we act more as an educational resource
Exactly.
for landlords in Corte Madera, potentially beyond. There's no reason that somebody couldn't contact you who wasn't a Corte Madera building owner. But so I think the questions would be, as you outlined a couple of ideas of ways to provide that educational resource, what's sort of the best way to proceed in terms of next steps here for the committee?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you'd mentioned a post, and maybe you're better with outreach than I am, but for the water heater, we had the postcard, which was kind of an introduction to the topic, and then a second one to promote the workshop. I wonder if we might have kind of a similar approach. Do we even have the owner's contact information for all of the, and I believe the incentives are for 4 units and above, or greater than 4 units, it's something like that for MCE. And I know PG&E had a program similarly. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a limit on the number of apartments for MCE's program.
There was in mine, and I believe it wasn't a limit, it was a
minimum.
Minimum. Thank you. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a couple of ways we could pull, probably not the exact list of all property owners, but
Like
we could at
quote?
least pull the property owners in the zones where we allow multifamily housing in Corte Madera. So it might be a little bit of a wider net. But we could put together a mailing list.
So if we had the mailing list, we could do 1 or 2 postcards and then develop a program which would involve a tour of yours and whatever information we thought would be relevant. What do you think would be a good way to have a first step notification?
Yeah, I think that's certainly, a way to go. I'd be curious to hear what the response rate has been from postcards in the past. I think that is a good way to reach a lot of people within a single effort. And depending on how many multifamily dwellings are in the community or how many people we think might be interested, we could also supplement that with some direct contacts if there are individuals that we know who are interested in sustainability, might have a large complex, might benefit from EV chargers because of the incentives that they might have to get more tenants. I think some direct contact could be beneficial as well, and could motivate some more responses to this effort and get them out to learn more about it. But I think as many different means as possible is always a good way to go when it comes to trying to communicate about something.
I think I've mentioned this before, that while it is definitely an attribute, we have a housing shortage here, so it's not like people are dying for tenants, but it's definitely, a way to get better tenants. There you go.
Maybe as a next step, I'm not sure where we would access this, but to find out how many of these qualifying buildings there are actually in Corte Madera. I don't know if that's a number that's obtainable. Maybe you might have a better sense of.
Yeah, I think we could put together at least a rough estimate. And yeah, Karen, I think you had sent me some.
There was,
numbers.
now I'm even forgetting. Again, when I was just kind of poking around the topic, there was some data. It's a little stale, but it's probably still pretty, about the amount of Corte Madera residents who reside in multifamily dwellings. And I think it was maybe a quarter, something like that. But of course, that doesn't speak to how many there are. But yeah, so, it's still substantial. Yeah.
I mean, I guess my instinct would be to kind of have a fact gathering period here first before we try to do outreach. So how many units, how many buildings are we talking about? How many landlords are we talking about if we can obtain that data? Maybe get a clearer sense of what the incentives are, both from MCE, and if PG&E has some incentive as well, that would be useful to.
Yeah, PG&E, I think, again, I just glanced through this. I think PG&E had a program probably for low income where they did full subsidy, but it was closed. So I'm not sure I could see whether it was going to be open again. It's a different target. But I think it would also be, to the extent we can, try and keep track of how many actual residents this applies to. Again, a quarter was about, a rough estimate, but I would really like to know. Yeah.
I think the county's trying to come up with a comprehensive listing of such organizations that give rebates, and so it becomes easier to find them rather than searching all over and not getting a comprehensive.
Well, I think that's what organizations like the one UW ran and a few others do, right?
Yeah, that's what they do, but there's not you can't just go to a place and look at the list and look at the rebates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is something the county has put together. They had
Yes.
a transportation electrification push last year when they came to the car show and tabled. So I believe that's a resource on their website.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to get the facts as best we can. I don't know who is best positioned to do that, or where we would start, frankly. I assume the town must have records of.
Yeah, I can look into that and ask
Okay.
our planning team what kind of information they have.
Okay.
And Phoebe,
I-
if you need, someone to be a data grunt, I'd be happy to help you pour through data if you
There we go.
want.
It also seems like if MCE is promoting this, that it would be interesting to try to get someone from MCE who's focused on this to come and talk to the landlords, or as many of them would be willing to convene. And I think an appropriate role for the committee would be if there was some information from MCE that we could disseminate to those landlords, and then also potentially host, an event like we did on the water heaters, where if we could have an expert or a couple of experts and a landlord who's gone through the process already, for those landlords who are interested, at least could come and have, hear about the experience, have a Q&A, that kind of thing. I mean, that feels like an appropriate role for the committee to try to be a convening force for, sort of bring the information to the people who can actually act on it.
I think that's great. I'll throw this out, and I'm unsure myself, but do we want to somehow involve multifamily dwelling residents so they could sort of lobby their building owners, or how do we feel about that?
What would that look like in your mind?
Well, just CC them on, for instance, a gathering about what it involves.
I don't know if we have a
yeah.
way to reach them in a sort of segregated fashion. We have, of course, the town email, which goes out to, I guess it's a list of 6,000 or something, right? And it goes, typically gets, what's the open rate? I don't know,
Usually about 50%.
50%. So you're getting a lot of people. So if you said something in there, do you live in a multi-tenant?
Yes, so it'd be
The
sort of,
question is, what's the call to action? Is it ask your landlord if you're interested in having EV charger, start asking your landlord for it, or what would be the?
well, yes, that would be it, would be to have it
Or
to
just
say.
merely asking the tenant if they would be more thinking more about an EV if the landlord was willing to install the charger.
That could be done through a survey instead of,
Yeah.
I don't know, just something to think about if we want to have it as sort of secondary marketing, if they want to be informed about it. I don't know. But probably not the primary focus.
Yeah, well, to Karen's point, I think it could be a good way to do a needs assessment, to be able to poll rental residents and get a sense if they do own EVs, if they would benefit from having an EV charger on the property, and if so, how much they'd be willing to pay. A relatively short questionnaire, but if we saw that there was a dwelling that had a lot of interest, it could be helpful to present that to the property owners and say, hey, your tenants really are interested in this.
There are significant, well, I don't know the exact percentage, but not all multifamily are renters. There's a lot of condos, so
Great.
I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah,
I think the condo association would be the target there. Yeah.
that's great. Okay, perfect.
So would you envision, I'm just trying to understand how that might work. So in the town newsletter, you would have if you're a resident of a multi-tenant building and you're interested in EVs, please take our survey. Is that what and have a link?
I'm
or
not
what?
advocating a
Okay.
survey. I think the survey opens up a lot of questions about sample size and are you getting, the correct data? And I'm not necessarily going to go there for this. I would just say if we were to have any kind of a workshop, to make it open
Make it
to
open to tenants.
tenants and or condo owners. Yeah, that was my thought. Of surveys, another whole story, but I guess it's just my background. I'm always concerned about the correct sample. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think, Phil, thanks for bringing this, and obviously thanks for putting the chargers in. Hopefully you'll get some tenants who start buying EVs. I think before we push the button on any kind of actual outreach here, I feel like we should kind of get a better sense of what the facts are and how many buildings and residents we're talking about. So maybe for the next month, is that a reasonable time frame to ask? Karen, you offered to help, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Maybe work with Phoebe on that.
Mm.
Just try to pull some of the key data points. We can also talk about it offline as to what those might be. And then, Bill, what do you see as next steps from your point of view in terms of dealing with you said there was an owners association and.
Yeah, well, I'm actively working on that. I'm actively working on following through with those comments, connections. So hopefully by next meeting, I'll have better answers on how to get responses from the Property Owners Association.
Do you think it would be good to start drafting some kind of a presentation you would put together for property owners?
Yeah, I kind of have it in my head already, but I can certainly write up a presentation, and maybe what would be helpful would be to have, some of you guys come over with me and look at the apartment, see what kind of questions you ask, and learn from that interplay of ideas what the best way to go about it is and to present it once you're more familiar with the nuts and bolts of it.
I can help you with that. It
Okay.
would be in early April. I'd be interested to see it.
Okay.
And I guess the way I'm thinking about it is that there's probably a classification of different types of buildings, whether they're condos or tenants. There's size, some will qualify for certain incentives, some won't. And I think just being able to help, if there is interest from landlords, to help them understand kind of which bucket do I fall into, and therefore what are my options.
Mhm.
The other aspect of this is potential technology providers, and we started on this last year, kind of
Yes.
looking at, because there are a few companies that actually specialize in this particular problem. We're not in the business of promoting specific companies, but I think if there's a list that MCE has developed, that we can amplify on our website or something. I mean, I could sort of envision eventually a page on our website, the town website, the climate committee website, saying, if you're a landlord, here are some resources for you if you're interested in
Right.
buying.
There is a lengthy list on MCE's website.
Yeah.
Of those vendors, and there's also other vendors who do a simplistic version of it that are not supported, that are not rebatable, but they still support at a lower cost. They provide a networking service.
Yeah.
But is not approved by MCE.
Right.
So there's a multitude of things, some of which I understand and some of which are kind of ethereal.
And there is a presentation coming up, right, from, I don't know, maybe that was just in my inbox, but there's one of these companies is doing a Q&A session.
Don't recall the name of the company off
Yeah.
the top of my head, but yes, if anyone else is interested in attending that, it's a company that does specifically EV charging for multifamily properties. I think it's coming up towards the end of the month.
Yeah, I think the 27th, maybe.
Is that Cool the Earth?
No, it's a company that actually sells chargers and charging systems. It's on the 27th. I think it's a virtual event. Moon 5.
Moon 5, that's it. Yeah.
Could you circulate that to the committee?
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, we're not promoting that particular company, but that would just be an
Information.
example.
Yeah.
Because we've had a couple
Interesting.
of others that I interacted with last year who specialize in this stuff, and we just didn't find a way to kind of collate the information.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it would be fine for the committee to provide information about these other companies that are out there that may not be on MCE's list, as long as it's clear that it's informational and that we're not promoting
Yeah.
any one company over another. And likewise, the committee can provide resources and Phil can share his experience, but I think we should be careful to have a disclaimer that the committee isn't sort of providing official guidance on this topic, and that you should always get a contractor involved, and just make sure that we're making that clear to property owners, so we're not creating any kind of legal risk or liability.
Yeah, the other piece that might be useful, and I'm thinking instead of us recreating the wheel, I mean, we're kind of, I think, operating under an assumption here that there's repressed demand for EVs from people who live in multi-tenant buildings because they don't have chargers. And the reason they don't have chargers are many, right, given the housing situation. If there were some studies available that had shown that in other areas, whether it's through MCE or nationwide, that gives some evidence that actually that's the case, and that when people do install these things, people tend to buy more EVs. I think that would be good validation just for us, so we're not barking up the wrong tree, but also to potentially show to landlords and say, hey, if this is something that you're interested in promoting, that there does seem to be usually a positive effect once these are installed. I'm happy to kind of look for some of that if anybody else wants to just have a Google search around and think about if they come across anything good.
Yeah, I can send you one off the top of my head from the Center for Law, Energy, and the Environment at Berkeley Law. They did an
Okay.
deep dive into specifically multifamily EV charging recently.
Yeah, I'd be interested. Yeah, could you circulate that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
okay, that's great.
Good idea.
Because so far we're operating on a theory, so it'd be nice to have a little bit of evidence.
Yeah, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe unless there's further comments on this one? No. So just to recap, we'll have this on the agenda for the next month's meeting. The idea would be to fill in some basic data here. So if you could circulate that study, Phoebe, if you don't mind, would you mind just pulling the key insights out of it? Or if you have the bandwidth, just a couple bullet points of here's what the key findings were. And if people find other studies, send them to Phoebe. We can't email the whole committee ourselves, but if you send them to Phoebe, she can disseminate them to us. And if people have time to read them, that'd be great. And we'll try to get some data on how many buildings we're talking about. If we have the next level of data would be how many landlords are we talking about? And then to try to get a list of what the actual incentives are that are available for people.
And I'll prepare an outline for how to present ideas on how to present this information. If you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Anything we've missed? Anything else you guys want to add? No. Okay, that's great. Interesting topic and hopefully something we can make a little bit of an impact on. So good. So we'll draw that one to a close. In that case, we'll move to item C, which is discussion of strategies to promote participation in resilient neighborhoods program from Benita.
So Phoebe and I met with Catherine Stevenson, who is the Executive Director of Resilient Neighborhoods, as well as Tamara Peters, who is the founder and program director and the board of director. So they were very positive. They really were interested in partnering with us to increase participation. I think one of the main suggestions would be something like we were having a heat pump presentation, and they would be willing to come on table and talk and present their materials there. So next time we have one, we could possibly invite them over. And there's other ways we could also promote them at the women's clubs or Rotary clubs, Hall Middle School, the green teams, high school, the environmental groups. So we also we could do the newsletter, Corte Madera newsletter. One thing I did discuss with them is maybe a smaller standalone modules, and my pet one was food waste. Maybe the school kids would like doing that, simple enough. But at this point, they said they would need to develop it, and that takes some funding to do that. So right now, that's not on the table, but something to think about in the future. So we left it as, we had a very nice discussion. They're interested. I actually took their Resilient Neighborhoods about many, many years ago. And, it was a lot. It was a lot of putting together numbers. And so, my preference was try to do standalone modules, but that's not on the cards now. But it was great. I learned a lot. And so one thing could be maybe we could, if anyone's willing, we could take it and see how that helps, and we could learn more about it. But I'd like to go back and see how we can partner. I don't know where they're advertising and how they're doing it. So we could partner with them, and so we don't, we get a little more strategic in how we want to promote this.
Could you maybe just give an overview of what the program is for those who aren't fully familiar with it? I have a general sense of it, but I don't know all the details of it. So.
Oh, gosh. So when I took it, it was basically trying to determine your carbon footprint. So it's taking a look at your PG&E bills, I can't say I recall all the details right now, but they do go into many different sections, and maybe I could present it next time. Take a look at it, or maybe even sign up for their next program. I could come back and do that. But basically you're trying to figure out your carbon footprint and try to reduce it. They give you some tips on how to reduce it.
So it's activity-based, it's built environment.
It's looking at your electricity consumption. Like I said, I did take it many years ago. I can't recall the exact components of it anymore, but I could go back and let me see if I can sign up for one and go through the process. Yeah.
Is there an adaptation component to it as well, or is it
They suggest, yes. So it's the idea of trying to make changes to improve it. Is that what you're asking?
Well,
Yeah,
the resilient implies, potentially an adaptation angle to it, which is climate change is happening. What can you do to?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think the last module, so there's 5 modules and 5 workshops. And I believe the last one is around connecting with your neighbors and preparedness and more on the resilient side. And then the other ones are going through sort of the main mission categories and providing resources and support on how to reduce those.
It's my understanding that people commit to a reduction. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, you say you look through and you say, and I guess 2 things. One, I was thinking,
Questions at this point?
I'm sorry, questions.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I could pose it as a question. Maybe I just won't. Oh, then one question would be, so I've taken there are very detailed carbon footprint calculators that you can do where you go through your bill and you go through, all kinds of things in your purchases. Can we sell this? Do you think we can sell this as being worthwhile with all the time involved as opposed to just doing a calculator?
I think it also, I think it's something about coming together as a group. It is, I felt like there is, like when you look at you're used to it. So for you, it's simple. But for some people who never look at their PG&E bill, it can be daunting. So it's kind of nice to have a group together. And it's usually people, in the neighborhood. So it's not like you're driving far away. So I think it's a great way to, it would be just Corte Madera residents, I guess.
Yeah.
It would be all people close together. So I would definitely think it's good to meet. Yeah, I think people might like it just because there's a social aspect to it.
Is there a charge for it?
No.
Okay.
And one thing that Catherine was emphasizing, and the reason why they have it as such a long and involved program is it's based on behavior change science. So having the same team getting together over the 8-week period sort of encourages people to make those changes and come back and share what changes they've made. So that's sort of the rationale behind why the program is structured the way it is.
And it's been around and growing for many years. So they're doing something right.
Do you have a sense of what the target audience is? Is it for homeowners?
Yeah.
They also renters. So in recent years, I think they've been incorporating more measures that renters can take.
Any other questions for the moment? No. Do we have any public comment or questions?
No public comment.
Okay. So we'll close the public comment period. So can you maybe a little more specifically, what would you like the committee's support on in
I
terms
think
of?
as a first step, I will try to go back to them and see what they are doing and how we can support them. Then we can go from there. Especially I'd like to work with the schools and see if we can team up with them. So, but I need to talk to them first, make sure what their outreach is. I didn't get into all those details with them, but if I understand what kind of outreach they're doing, then we could see if we could tag team with them and work with them. So I don't have the answers right now, but I'll try to get those for next month.
I was also wondering when you talked to them about outreach, I was envisioning doing a workshop just promoting taking that course. You could have testimonials, a broad outlook, and then, as you said, a promotion of working with a team of people, which is kind of nice. Yeah. And I know it's very hard to get, we were thrilled to get 30 or whatever it was for heat pump water heating. So I don't know how many we draw, but it's a thought, some way to publicize it, but really, we're all asking questions about it, and maybe people before they commit to
Maybe
8
they-
weeks?
yeah,
I don't
maybe
know.
They would do a presentation.
Maybe. I don't know.
We did
Yeah.
talk with them about that
Yeah.
and they were open to the
Yeah.
idea. I
Yeah.
think their suggestion was, as Vineetha mentioned, having them come to the end of an existing presentation. I think it's just easier to tack it on to an event that you already have people excited about and coming to rather than having a standalone event. And that was also, Vineetha mentioned, they do work with these like affiliate groups and they have Resilient Neighborhood ambassadors, people who have taken the program before who go to their book club or any other local group that they're part of and sort of talk about the program. So that's another avenue that the committee could pursue. If there's groups in town that you're part of that you think might be interested, we could get in touch with one of their ambassadors and have them come present.
What is the schedule for, like, is it running all the time or is it currently, where are they in terms of their cycle?
It's offered quarterly. So the spring teams are starting on, there's a Thursday team and a Wednesday team, March 27th and April 2nd. So those are the ones that are coming up soon. And the town has been promoting those in the newsletter, on social media. And it was also sent to the Neil Cummins, to be included in the Neil Cummins school newsletter. And I also sent it to all of our youth members and they were going to try and get it in the Redwood newsletter. So we've been promoting that through all of the town's channels. And then the next sessions would be starting in the summer, I believe.
Yeah, I was going to mention, which sounds like you're on it already, but in terms of the student outreach,
Mhm.
working with Sid and Sienna,
Yeah,
Dylan.
right.
They're all at Redwood, I believe. So that's just one school, but there is an environment club. And so is the idea there that they would get their parents to participate? Is that
Yes,
kind of the thing?
yes.
Okay.
Anything else you'd like to add? PB, you were at the meeting too, or?
I think we covered it. And yeah, just on the youth, they do need to have a parent with them if they're under 18, if they're not
mhm.
the homeowner or renter, but
Yeah.
they're welcome to participate too.
Yeah, I think this was mainly meant to be an introductory meeting just to see gauge their interest in partnering with us. So there was a lot of enthusiasm. So that the next step is, if we all agree, we'll follow up with them to see how we could partner better.
Okay, well, that sounds great. Yeah, I mean, I find the name is a little bit, it doesn't necessarily, in my mind anyway, indicate that it's climate. Like calculating your carbon footprint and how to reduce your climate impact. When I hear resilient neighborhoods, I think more about fires and floods and so more on the adaptation side or just general emergency preparedness, which is a separate set of events.
Yeah. When I took it, it was mainly my impression at that time was just reducing your carbon footprint, calculating and reducing. Is where it started out. I don't know if it's changed over the years, but that's how it started out.
Ecologists would argue that reducing your carbon footprint is resilient. But
Yeah.
anyway, but I agree, the name is.
The name stuck.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other comments on this? No. Okay, so thank you for the update. Sounds like maybe for the next month, we could have another update with, sounds like we're already doing some promotion
Yes.
on behalf of them. So whatever recommendations you have or requests for the
Right.
next meeting would be.
I'll see how we could improve the numbers here. Yeah, see how we could partner with them.
Okay, great. So we'll bring that one to a close. In that case, we're on to updates and reports, starting with staff. So Phoebe, over to you.
Thank you. Have quite a few updates this meeting since we missed the February meeting. And the first being, you may have already noticed this, but our first public EV charging stations are open and operational here at Town Hall and then also at Town Park across the street in the Pixley parking lot. That's very exciting and appreciate all the support and interest of the committee over the years to get the project to this point. Also wanted to provide an update on the repair fair that was held on February 8th. It was a very successful event. There were 64 items successfully repaired and a total of 479 pounds of material were diverted from the landfill between the repaired items and the clothing swap that was also part of the event, which they calculate avoids over 2,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent. There are some upcoming fairs. So we were actually the first fair of the year in Marin, but all the other jurisdictions are also going to be hosting one. So if you missed it and have something you want to get repaired, they're not limited to just the jurisdiction. So take a look on the Zero Waste Marin website for upcoming repair fairs. Also heard from the county about their heat pump water heater and HVAC workshops that were held earlier this year. Sounds like those went well as well. And there were over 70 attendees at each of the events. And those were recorded and are available on their YouTube page. I believe I sent out an email earlier this week or last week to all of you about the draft fee study update, which has been released. So this is for building and planning fees. The draft does include reduced fees for electric water heaters and HVAC, EV chargers, and battery storage. And so there are a couple upcoming opportunities to provide public comment. Of course, you can always provide public comment by email. I think our community development director is the contact there. But if you'd like to come to a meeting where this will be discussed, the Planning Commission is having a workshop on Tuesday, March 25th at 7 p.m. Well, they'll be discussing the draft fee study. And there'll be a council study session on April 1st at 6:30 p.m. A couple of housekeeping items in terms of the committee. Several members have terms that are expiring on June 30th. So that is Pat, Karen, Phil, and then Sienna and Dylan. You should have all received an email from our town clerk with information about how to reapply if you would like to. And please let me know what your plans are. Those applications are due May 9th. Related to that, the town will be holding its first ever volunteer fair on Saturday, April 19th from 10:30 to 12:30. And the goal is to share information about all of the volunteer opportunities that are available in town, including all of our advisory bodies, but also other groups that exist and volunteer in town. And we would love to have someone from the committee represented there to talk about what the committee does and, potentially get applicants who are interested in applying for those seats that are coming up. So Rebecca, our assistant town manager, I believe, sent an email to you all with information about that. So please, if you're interested, there's a sign up link in that email to volunteer for a 1-hour shift at that event.
Would that have gone to our committee emails?
Did you not receive it?
I mean, I don't.
It should have
I
gone
don't
to
remember
your
seeing it. So
personal,
put it that way.
but it's
So
possible
personal, it's much less likely that I saw it there because
that it probably, you did. Okay, great.
what's the date again?
April 19th.
That's a volunteer
It's a
Fair?
volunteer fair.
separate from the volunteer appreciation dinner
Yes.
thingy. Okay.
Right. Yeah, this is more about getting more people involved.
Okay. So you want someone from the committee to go give a quick talk on what we do?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the exact setup would be. It may just be more like a tabling event with information about all the different volunteer opportunities.
Okay. Maybe you could send this group
I
an
can
email just following
recirculate
up on
that.
that one and see if people are free and want to participate, let Phoebe know. And if what exactly the ask is, that would be whether it's just tabling or whether there's a walk or something that needs to be done. What time was it and where is it?
10:30 to 12:30 on that Saturday, and where I would assume it's at Town Hall, but maybe it's at the community center. I'm not sure. I'm sure Rebecca put it in her email.
If you could just forward that to us again.
Oh, it's at the community center.
So, okay.
Yeah, I'll send that out again. Okay, and then Since Dave stepped down, we no longer have a vice chair on the committee. I sent out an email about this as well, but just as a reminder, typically the vice chair is elected at the first meeting of the fiscal year with the chair. So this position would be until July when we'd have new committee members seated or returning members reseated and re-elect chair and vice chair. However, we would like to identify a vice chair in the case that Pat is not able to attend and chair a meeting. So that's really the main duty of the vice chair, is to chair a meeting in the chair's absence. But let me know if anyone has any questions about that role or is interested in it. We'll likely be having that on the next agenda. And then finally, I sent this notice out to our youth members, but in case anyone else on the committee is interested or has connections with youth that you'd like to share it to, I'll forward this email to you as well. MCE is holding a youth festival on March 30th in Contra Costa County. And it seems like the goal is sort of sharing job opportunities and resources with young folks who are interested in going into climate spaces. So it's their first time holding an event like this, but it sounds like it'll be a great event with lots of resources. So I will send that out to you all as well. And that's it for staff updates.
Great. Thanks, Phoebe. Any questions on those? No? Okay. In that case, committee member updates. Sarah, I know you were going to offer to give a quick update on the MCE meeting that you attended.
Yeah.
Anybody else has one after Sarah? Just pipe up.
Absolutely. Thank you. MCE had a Community Power Coalition town hall style event this afternoon, and it was really an opportunity for them to talk about the savings that residents of this Marin and Northern Bay Area can benefit from their services as energy affordability gets more difficult with wildfire mitigation, growing demand, the cost of renewables driving up prices. And they saw that people who were enrolled within their program only saw a 65% rate increase from 2020, which sounds like a lot until you look at PG&E's increase, which was 90%. So there certainly are incentives for residents to take a look at their program offerings and their discount plans, which they have listed on their website. And they have robust offerings for residents, from business owners to local government, and including EV charger installations that we spoke about. So there are a lot of opportunities for people to receive financial incentives for engaging in electrification efforts.
Question. So was the workshop about electrification or saving money on your bill?
It was a town hall event to get feedback from community members about the challenges that their constituents have regarding affordability of power in their areas, and to be able to amplify the program offerings that MCE has within their communities, and for them to also hear from those community members what else they can offer to increase those benefits and incentives for people to engage.
Okay. Okay, and I'm a former PG&E employee, so MCE typically administers PUC programs. That's what their funding comes from. So anyway, the distinction, I think the distinction between PG&E, maybe we can talk offline about that.
Okay. Yes, Phil?
At the Climate Action Collaborative meeting on the 13th of this month, Mary Sackett, who's the county supervisor, spoke, and it seemed like the thing on her radar was about recycling clean water. And, we don't really talk about that much here, but I just thought I'd bring it up that was something that was, it's obviously on the county's radar about the water supply, but just that there's a county supervisor who's very interested in recirculating, reclaiming clean water.
Do they have any particular initiatives that or that they highlighted?
Uh, Not really. I mean, I think that there's, they're trying to convince developers to put in purple pipe as part of their project from the beginning. So it'll make an infrastructure eventually link into more infrastructure. So I think that was the main thing. It's just like wanting the California Energy Code is thinking about setting up, because they want you to wire and prepare for all electric house when you do work in a house. I think her idea would be also to prepare the house with recycled water infrastructure capability.
And Phil, is that because recycled water can't go through the normal pipes that regular water goes through in your home?
Correct. It's identified as, yeah, you can recirculate it, you can clean it up in whatever means, but it would be in a purple pipe used presumably for irrigation or as gray water.
Interesting. Okay. Any other updates from the committee or staff? No. Okay. Okay, so just to recap on future agenda items, so it sounds like we're gonna hear both from Phil regarding the multifamily EV chargers, Anita again regarding the promotion of the Resilient Neighborhoods program. Any other things that people feel ought to be on the agenda for next month? And you don't have to, if you don't have one now, it's okay to email me or and Phoebe, and we can add stuff as it comes up. But is there anything else, any other burning issues that people think we ought to be tackling at this point? Nope. Okay. Phoebe, anything on your radar?
This time, just the vice chair election.
The vice chair. Okay. So, yep.
Sorry, Pat, potentially the student ambassador program.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So yeah, on that note, actually, I could have given that as a little update, but Phoebe and I had a good call with Sydney the other day, who's our student ambassador. She's graduating this spring from Redwood. So if we want to continue that program, we need a couple of things. One is we need a committee member who's willing to kind of take that over and kind of lead the charge in terms of working with whoever our ambassador is going to be, and also helping to recruit that person. Sydney said she's happy to help do that, but she's got a short fuse here in terms of her, obviously there's only 2 months of school left. And then we talked more broadly about sort of what might be the redefinition if we want to redefine the role, what would be sort of some of the objectives and expectations for that. I think there was a general feeling that Sydney got value out of it. I think there's some conduit now between the committee and, at least in that case, Redwood, and particularly the environmental club at Redwood. But we were thinking about ways that we could sort of expand the sort of two-way dialogue and make it kind of a more productive engagement for both sides. Because I think we're not getting maybe enough of the student perspective that we'd like. And I don't particularly see us amplifying any messages in any significant way into the high school community. So are there ways that we can be more active? For instance, we talked about the possibility of having a Q&A with somebody from the committee at the high school, or having students come and attend some of these meetings, those who are interested, maybe attending a town council meeting, partly just to help them understand, like, this is how things get done or don't get done, as the case may be, in municipal government, just kind of how this is how things work. But then look for opportunities to try to deepen that engagement and kind of get more of a dialogue going. So suggestions are welcome. If people, have ideas about how we can make the program more meaningful. And then also, as I mentioned, we are looking for somebody to kind of step up and lead that effort if we're going to continue to do it. I guess we'll have that on the agenda for next month. And with that, unless there's any other business, looking around, not seeing any, we will adjourn until next month, April 16th, I believe. Thank you.
On time.